They can't make the arrest here, but they can put pressure.
It can absolutely put pressure on our justice system to do its job. And you have to go outside of your country. Like, there's something wrong in our system, right? When the FBI has to come back to Canada and say, what the fuck are you guys doing? Like, why?
We've been watching this play, and we're, it's kind of cool that we're in Calgary, where the first real wave of energy went around the world. When the Canadians, against all odds, stood up in -30 and gave hope to the world. And that hope, while people don't want to go back to it because it seems so distant, it did one thing. They could never shut down the planet again.
No.
We can now say that there's really one issue. Everybody's arguing over everything, but everybody thinks, something's wrong.
Yeah.
It's become abundantly clear that this world is run by a very small group of people who participate in pedophilia. It's about the children. We have to call it out. It's the only binding issue that gets us to the other side around the world. If someone were to hear this and translate it, it would resonate with them. They can all see. Every kid I've talked to, every adult I've talked to can see what's going on. And we have to go past that shame, because for every one pedophile, there are 170 victims. And yours is one of many stories, and it's time for the victims to have their voice heard and to come forward.
We're pioneering a movement, right? This is an infection that's gone on for a long, long time.
The counter-infection is right here, right?
Right,
Yes.
right. So you got to start in these small communities, in our homes. We have to be able to say, this is who did this to us, and give it back to the perpetrator. It can't be something that the victim holds on to. You can't have it as victim mentality.
I wasn't a victim of child molestation, but I've always been outraged by it and not been the kind to turn away, because turning away from it makes the next victim and the next victim and the next victim, and the cycle has to stop. Some tried to come forward, they saw others come forward, they were shamed by their mother or some family member to keep quiet, not say anything. It's the hardest topic to talk about. People don't want to think about it, they don't want to believe it, but it's everywhere. It's our hockey coaches, it's our politicians, it's the highest. We can see it with our own eyes. Every once in a while one of them's arrested, but we keep watching what happens after they're arrested. They go to court and magically, poof, there are no charges, or the charges are dropped, or time served, and whatever the sentence should have been 10, 15, 20 years ends up being a 2-week hotel stay.
People end up that way. They're trained to be that way. We have a whole system training people to be this way. And unfortunately, Jason, it starts in our homes, right? Nobody wants to hear that a dad would do that. Nobody wants to hear that a uncle would do that. Nobody wants to hear that a brother would do that. But believe me, it occurs every day on a regular basis in our province. And when you look around at our children, it's evident. When they're over-sexualized, their outbursts with drugs and alcohol.
All the addictions.
Unless you can look at yourself and say, where do I fit into this fabric of life? How do I play a part? How does my energy show up? To change it, it won't change. My dad's brother is a convicted pedophile. He was charged when I was about 15 years old. And at that time, I showed clear signs that something was wrong. And when I was asked, I told the truth that had occurred. I tried to take my own life more than once at that time. My mom asked, that perpetrator, Chester Glenn, asked my mother, Susan Glenn. He phoned her, she said, and asked her if he'd done anything to me, because he was being charged with incest molestation on 2 other counts from some of my cousins. She knew. I told her. I was in the hospital. I tried to slit my wrists. That's why I have a tattoo. Right.
He didn't want another charge.
He didn't want another. I think he was okay with getting another charge. She wasn't okay with the truth coming out, because that would destroy an illusion. Right?
He wasn't ashamed enough. He was protected.
So
who was protecting your uncle?
My parents protected him.
How about the
The police protected
Where,
him.
where are you from again?
Caroline, Alberta. Yeah, Caroline, Alberta. It's about
6,000
2.5
people,
hours. Yep, 2.5 hours northwest of here. A nice enough community, but the amount of pedophilia that's went on in that community, oh my gosh. I mean, there was just a teacher, a school teacher from Caroline, Alberta that was arrested. He's being charged right now. His name is Tyler Canton. My family had the same groomer he did. So the person who groomed the children in my family was actually from his family. Her name was Fager Canton. And she obviously did her job in their world well because he became a pedophile. She created a pedophile. With all the other pedophiles, she got to do shit to him. And I'm not excusing his behavior at all. But you want a clear indication why somebody would turn out that way?
These are the nests of this
Yes,
infection.
these are, absolutely.
And so many others are tagged. Single moms dating a guy, had no idea,
Right.
taken,
Right.
stolen. But it's all the same. It's a tag, it's a mark, it's a stealing of your innocence. How have you dealt with it? How have you dealt
Oh
with
gosh.
this?
Ugh. Well, in my younger years, I didn't deal with it well. Okay.
Yeah.
I had a lot of mental health issues. I abused drugs at one time. I wasn't kind to myself. I didn't love myself. I didn't even like myself. Why would I? I never felt a reason to. When your innocence is taken that way, that's something you develop. I mean, like I said, it shows in the fabric of our children. Because when you've had an illusion that everything looks good on the surface, right? Everyone's wearing these masks, so nobody knows what's going on behind closed doors.
We all know about Epstein, we know about Maxwell, we're seeing it, it's been shattered. That we're just not talking about it. For every one pedophile, there's 170 victims. And they're angry, and they want to shout out, and they've never been heard. And I think we're in a digital reality where if this conversation starts happening and people start outing their families, hopefully this conversation goes far and wide, gets translated. There's 170 victims.
Right.
Few went on to commit pedophilia and take the path of, well, it happened to me. In every city, in every neighborhood, knows that it's time to do what you need to do because you've been found out. It's surrender. Grab the police, go to the police you know aren't protecting you and tell them, I'm actually turning myself in with that police officer who's been protecting me. I need to stop. We hope you find God with it, like ask for forgiveness. We know it happened to you. You just have to stop saying, well, it happened to me so it can happen to someone else, and say enough.
Well, ultimately, I'm not going to carry the burden anymore. These people didn't have the right to look the other way. My mother didn't have the right to look the other way, Jason. My aunts and uncles didn't have the right to look the other way. My cousins didn't have the right to look the other way. Our justice system and our school system had no business looking the other way.
Yes, and we all did, and some who were passive victims or onlookers or terrified individuals who could have done something, said something, didn't. Now is the time where you make up for that little shame. And the ones that are holding the shame, the real victims, the trauma, you are worthy. You're worthy, Robin. You're so much more worthy than you've ever been led to believe. And taking your innocence also took your worth. And all that fear that you felt is gone now. You're not feeling afraid anymore. The guilt and shame are fading away with you speaking out and doing something about it. And you've contacted the FBI, who has gotten back to you now. And
Yep. I
there's-
contacted the FBI.
you know, we're not going to chastise all the police. There's a lot of onlookers. There's a lot of people who were victimized and didn't sign a statement, didn't come forward. But now is the time.
It is the time.
It's.
Why should I have to go to the police again and ask them to do something again when this person can go to the police and turn themselves in because those complaints were already made by me? So this person has
And that's
an
where they can be
opportunity.
treated humanely, because we've seen it throughout history, and it's actually happened already around the world, that it becomes a hunt.
Right.
And the mob's rage rips them apart, and the shame still comes forward. And you had mentioned something that your father said just before he took his own life when you confronted him.
My dad, the last thing my dad said to me is,